So welcome back to the CrossFit Fellow podcast. Today, John and I are going to talk about postpartum, pregnancy and postpartum. Mm-hmm. John's so excited about it.
No, it is really interesting. I just, I'm not going to be able to give much intel into this one. This one's all you.
You're going to learn a lot.
I will learn a lot.
Yeah, this will be fun. Disclaimer, we do have our kids with us today. They're watching Frozen behind us. So we might have to be interrupted a couple times, but that'll be fine.
We'll see.
Yeah. So pregnancy and postpartum. It's a super fun topic. I got certified pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach. That's just the title of it. Back in when was Andy born? 2021? Back in 2021, the summer of 2021. I think I was pregnant with her as I was finishing it up. Mm-hmm. A super fun course. I did it through Brianna Battles. You can find her on Instagram. Her course is super informative. You kind of take it at your own pace, which I also loved because, kids and just life. But it was awesome, super informative, and then also going through 2 pregnancies myself. I just wanted to be informed a little bit better. And then running the gym, we just wanted to help our athletes the best we can, and we see a ton of women before they have kids, during pregnancy, and after they have kids. So we just kind of wanted to talk through some of this stuff on a basic level, and then always come and talk to any of the coaches really. I've kind of prepped most of them on a lot of these things, but always text me, call me. I'm never going to be upset about modifying something or answering your questions when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum. That's what I'm here for. And I truly love it. Truly, truly love it. So first, let's kind of talk through what your pelvic floor is. So, your core and your pelvic floor. You hear me saying that a lot. I doubt John says it that often.
Not
pelvic
much.
Floor. You probably talk about your core, but so when we talk about your core, okay, it's more than just your abs, so more than just what you can see. I know a lot of people, they want that 6-pack, they want an 8-pack, they want to see the muscles, and I get that. But when I'm talking about your core, I am mainly talking about those deep core muscles. It's just, so I wrote down a lot of notes. We're going to try to make sure I'm not all over the place jumping, but it's a system that works together in coordination for both function and fitness demands. The teammates of the core system are your pelvic floor, your diaphragm, your abdominals, and your spine. So it kind of all works together. And then your pelvic floor, okay, it's the area between your tailbone and your pubic bone within the pelvis. That's just the muscles within that area. Guys also have a pelvic floor. So it's not just women that have this. Typically women, we talk about women's pelvic floor a little bit more because if women choose, they want to have babies and they have a baby and they're going through that, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor. Men don't tend to get that much pressure on their pelvic floor because they aren't having to carry a baby. Now, there's some other things we can talk about men later, but when I am talking through your core and your pelvic floor, I am really trying to get you guys or get athletes to breathe properly. And knowing what your core is, knowing what your pelvic floor is, that's going to kind of help you be aware of where it's at, what's going on. And then when I tell you to breathe, there's different types of ways you can breathe to engage your core and your pelvic floor. So what I had said earlier, the whole system of your core is your pelvic floor, diaphragm, abdominals, and your spine. Mm-hmm. So some different ways that you can breathe. Your diaphragm obviously has a huge influence on that. Yeah. That's getting affected the most, I would say.
I actually, not to interrupt,
no,
but I just got done teaching core muscles in kinesiology.
Awesome.
So this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
The way I explained it to the students was, like you said, like your abdominal muscles and your core muscles are all there to hold your body in place. A lot of it's your spine. And I know we're talking specifically about pelvic floor here, but they all work together to basically hold things in place. Mm-hmm. And most of them, this is what's kind of interesting, that's different about these muscles. Most of your muscles outside of your core are connected bone to bone. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about levers, right? It's just you're connected one bone to other bone, it shortens and it pulls a bone closer to the other. core muscles are different. They're not connected bone to bone. Not all of them, anyway.
Yeah.
They're connected to each other through fascia, and so that makes it different. They have a different duty, I guess, in your body. Yeah, different function in your body, and a lot of it, like, and I don't know that much about pelvic floor per se necessarily, but even think about your abdomen, right? Your abs in the front, rectus abdominis, that's the one we all think about, but then your internal obliques, even your external obliques, and your transverse abdominis, all those, their job is not only just to look good, which is what most people want, but to hold your intestines in. So if you have weak abdominals, then like your intestines are going to start forcing out, and you don't want that. You want things to be held into place. And so I can imagine it's the same thing with your pelvic floor underneath, to hold things in place there and to help you function properly because things are held in place.
That's perfect. You explained that great. So with all of that, like John was saying, it's not connected bone to bone. Breathing has a big role in all of this. So there's a lot of different ways you can breathe while you are working out. That's specifically what we're talking about, not just everyday breathing. But when you are pregnant, you do need to be mindful of how you are breathing, like when you're picking up, if you have a toddler or another kid, how you're picking them up, how you're picking the groceries up, and like what your breath is doing. I know Jasmine, my pelvic floor PT, and I've recommended her, I will always recommend her to you guys. She would ask me, I think I was pregnant with Emma, she would say, when you roll out of bed, are you holding your breath? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I was not mindful of it. And I was laying down on a table. She was working on me, and then I had to get up, and I went, ooh. And she was like, that's not breathing. Like, you're holding your breath, you're putting all that tension straight into your stomach, and you could see a coning happening in my belly, which we'll kind of get into that. But the breathing, when you're inhaling, okay, the diaphragm is going to descend, and then the pelvic floor and the abs are going to give way. It's going to lengthen and relax. Okay, and when we exhale, so we're pushing that air out, the diaphragm is going to travel up, and then there's going to be a slight, I think it says, I don't know what that says.
You can't read your own handwriting?
No, a slight reflexive co-contraction of abs and abdominal, or of your pelvic floor. So there's a lot happening when you are just regular breathing in and out. Your diaphragm is moving.
Yeah.
So that's something to be mindful of whenever we're working out. So when you inhale, so the eccentric part, when we're moving down, let's say we're talking about back squats. Let's talk about back squats. When you inhale on the eccentric part of the movement, and then you exhale, that's going to lift your pelvic floor on the concentric part of the movement. So breathing through movements, you can breathe out on the way down, and then you breathe in on the way back up. That's one way to do it. It doesn't work for everybody. What I like to do for myself personally is breathe through the whole movement. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you cannot do that, because you might get super lightheaded. We don't want people passing out. It depends on the load that you have. It depends on the movement. It depends on the stimulus of the workout and where you're at in your pregnancy / postpartum phase. But exhaling through the full range of motion, that means you're maintaining a slight pelvic floor contraction, so not a ton, but you are maintaining it. And then you reset between reps. Okay, you're letting your belly fully relax at the top. Again, we're talking about back squats. Relaxing at the top, your belly. Still engaged, because you don't want that belly to poke out and put pressure on your lower back. But you allow yourself to relax, and then you go again. Something that I have recently been cueing my athletes on, if we have a back squat or we're doing something where it requires a good amount of focus on your breathing, breathe through your lats. I remember being told this with, I think it was Emma, and that was like, for me, that was a wonderful cue. I just understood it. It's not breathing through your shoulders. We're not pulling those shoulders up to your ears, but you breathe through those lats. And then when you breathe out, a cue that I tell my pregnant moms, wrap the baby. So you're wrapping the baby around. That means you're wrapping those core muscles. It's just a good way for your mind to think, okay, wrap the baby. It's also kind of lifting that pelvic floor at the same time as you go through your movement, whatever that is.
Is this like belly breathing versus chest breathing? Is it along those lines? Because that's, I think in exercise, that's what most people hear is like belly breathing and chest breathing.
Yeah. I know when I took this course, there was a big disclaimer between both of those things, I think pregnant or not. Chest breathing is not always the best because you're bracing the wrong muscles for the movement. Belly breathing is wonderful, a little difficult when you're pregnant. So if I tell a pregnant woman to belly breathe, like, it's just hard because the baby is there. The baby is pushing on all of those organs inside your diaphragm and everything. You can still belly breathe 100%, but it's just hard. It's a hard cue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. When I say breathe through your lats, I guess that might seem like it's a chest, but I don't want your chest moving too much. Like, I don't want it like a big, like, big
not
chest.
Making a big chest, taking that breath.
No.
Yeah.
I am really focused on getting into those deep muscles. So getting behind those surface muscles in your core and strengthening those, because if we can do that while we're pregnant, if we can learn how to breathe properly even before we're pregnant, and then we get pregnant, we're still learning to breathe properly through movements, postpartum is going to be so much better. It just helps you to it keeps those muscles strong. It helps you to that muscle memory of those deep muscles in your core. It helps to just rebuild those so much faster. That's why I strongly encourage and love when I have an athlete that comes to me and tells me that they're pregnant and they've been working out with me for months or years, and then I'm like, yes, like, stay in here your whole pregnancy. It's going to benefit you, not only just physically, but mentally. It's going to help you for postpartum, because postpartum it can be challenging, and if we can kind of eliminate some small things, it'll just mentally help you, I think.
I think it's cool to think about too, especially for pregnancy and postpartum, but really anybody, because we all have trouble breathing and getting that pressure in the right places. But what's causing you to breathe or helping you breathe is muscles. So when you first learn how to breathe properly or change those muscles, the muscles you're using that are the correct muscles are going to be weak. It's just like any other exercise. So it takes time. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, I feel that's better. Wow, I'm so much fitter now because I can breathe so much better. It's going to feel bad at first because it's like using a muscle that you've never used before, and it's going to be very weak, and it's going to give out quickly. You're talking a few minutes into the workout. That muscle that you're doing correctly now is going to get really tired, and your instinct is going to be to resort back to the old way of breathing. And that goes no matter what it is.
Men, women, pregnant, not pregnant.
So that's important to understand when you're trying to fix it, or just had a baby, or you're pregnant and you're trying to do this, is it's going to take a little time. Stick with it.
Something I have to tell a lot of people that are coming to me telling me that they're pregnant, and that's just going to be one of my first things to talk about, is going to be your breathing. And we talk about it in the regular classes, but I feel like it just gets a little bit more important when you're pregnant. Like, obviously, those things are changing there in your abs. And I encourage them to slow down their pace just a little bit, because I need them to focus on their breathing, and they could get lightheaded. And when that happens, just like you said, like, it's not going to happen forever. But once you learn how to breathe properly, you can start picking up the intensity again. But the intensity is going to have to get pulled away some. And that goes for anybody. We would much rather you take the intensity out of something and do it the right way, so that way you can add the intensity back.
100%.
You can always add intensity. But we want you to just move properly.
That's how it should be done.
Yes, for sure. So working out while pregnant, is it safe? We get this question a lot. Yes, it is safe. It's safe for you and the baby. A lot of doctors that people use recommend working out, moving, whatever that's going to look like.
Should you start working out if you haven't been working out? How does that look?
I think it depends on what you're working out or what that is. So let's say that I've got somebody, which I've had a couple of people walk in that have never worked out before, and they come in and they maybe have been working out for a little while, and then they tell me they're pregnant, or they're super early postpartum, whatever, and they've not worked out in months or years. I think it's the coach's responsibility to inform the athlete that we're going to take things slow. You've got to the coach has to set the standard for the athlete, because the athlete doesn't know. Like, people don't know exactly what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do. That's our job. I think starting slow, I do still think it's safe. Whether that's walking, whether that's running, give or take. I think that you should have ran before and not just start running as soon as you get pregnant. But I do think it's important to work out while you are pregnant. It does not have to be in our gym. It does not have to be in a CrossFit gym. But moving is going to benefit you and your baby so much more than just sitting, just not doing anything. It's going to be good for your blood, their development. There's not much, I say this, and I say this lightly, there's not much when you are pregnant, working out wise is what I'm talking about, that you can do to hurt the baby. Now, if you're being reckless, doing box jumps, not being very safe, and then you fall, obviously there are risks to certain movements. That's why we tend to eliminate those when it comes to certain points in the pregnancy. But moving is going to outweigh the benefits of moving while you're pregnant than not moving. It's just, I think it also helps you postpartum. Like, it just helps you mentally. When you are pregnant, a lot changes, and like working out will change, but it's still something you can do.
Yeah.
You know?
I can imagine that because if you've been working out consistently or when you get pregnant and through your pregnancy, your body gets used to recovering quickly. And then when you have a baby, which is an extreme event on your body is better equipped to recover from that.
Yes.
Too, not just...
And I think, like, which we'll talk about postpartum in a minute, but once you are postpartum, it depends on the birth. A lot of this stuff is individualized. Let me just highlight that. But I think moving earlier in your postpartum, again, it depends on your birth. It depends on the situations that happened. It depends on a lot of different things. But anytime you are injured, moving that area, stimulating that area of where it was injured is going to benefit you in the long run. So I'm not saying whenever you have a baby, like, let's get into the gym and start working out. No. I'm always going to tell you to breathe first. You need to practice breathing. You need to practice connecting back to your core. But I want you to walk. I want you to walk and practice your breathing. I want you to do glute bridges and practice your breathing. I want you to move and practice your breathing. That does not mean come in here, run, lift heavy or anything like that. But I do think it just gets your blood flowing and circulating a little bit better. And I do think that helps with the recovery. But again, it is very, very, very individualized. So if you've had a 4-degree tear, it's not going to be the best option for you right away. Like, we're going to have to ease ourselves into that. Or if you've had a C-section, like, that's a totally different ball game. Yeah. And we're going to do a lot of recovering with your ab muscles. So the next thing I have on here is, like, what type of exercises. I think personally it just depends on what you like, what you enjoy, what makes you happy. Because when you become pregnant, that beginning part, it is exciting, it is fun, and then your body starts to change. Even in the beginning, your body starts to change. You feel weird. A lot of women get sick that first trimester, and some throughout their whole pregnancy. And working out does not feel good to them. Like, I remember when I was pregnant with Emma, and usually if we don't feel good, we'll come work out and we feel better. And I remember you being like, well, let's just go work out really fast. And it literally took all of the energy I had to work out. And then, like, the rest of the day I'd be done. So it was not enjoyable for me during, like, 5 weeks of her pregnancy in the beginning. Did I still move? Yes. Did I still push through certain things? Yes, because that's what has always made me feel better. Did it make me feel better in pregnancy? Early postpartum or early pregnancy? No. But I still tried. I tried, you know? Yeah. But if in here is not working for you, if you're one of our members and if you're just exhausted, because we do a lot of stuff and it takes a lot of energy, just walk. Go and walk that day instead of coming in here. Your body might start to feel better again where you can come back in here. Or come in here and I'm going to modify the workout for you. Because we get that the community side of this is almost more important than the actual working out to most people. It's just getting to see people, getting to be around people, get away from, like, their normal and just coming in here and forgetting about a lot of stuff. So still come in here and I promise you I will modify anything. We can modify any movement, any workout to still get you moving, make you happy, because a lot of stuff once you become pregnant is out of your control. Your belly's going to start changing. Just your body starts changing. The anatomy of a pregnant woman's body starts to change drastically, and we have to move through that together. Every pregnancy is very different. Every woman needs different type of attention, and then I say this not lightly, but I do say this. Just because somebody has had a baby, and has worked out through the pregnancy and has worked out before the pregnancy and working out postpartum, don't follow exactly what they are doing, because we're all so different. So even if they are certified, not certified, they're working with somebody, they're not working with somebody that's certified. A lot of people just we get wrapped up in what social media is telling us and showing us, but you don't see a lot of the downsides of pregnancy or postpartum through somebody else's social media. So don't think, oh, this person is 28 weeks and they're still doing muscle ups, that you should do that. Like, that's not for everybody. Like, I'm going to talk through my pregnancies and my experiences because that's all I have to go off of. Lunges hurt me at probably 20 weeks with Emma and then 16 weeks with Andy. And if we have more kids, I'm sure it's going to just happen earlier and earlier. And like, that was something I just couldn't do anymore. Even the bike started to hurt. Single leg things started to really take a toll on my body. So I had to modify it. I'm not sure, besides one other person in the gym that has had that similar issue. Most of my other women, they're fine. They can do lunges the whole pregnancy. Am I super jealous? Yeah, because I would like to still be able to do certain things, but that's the nature of it. Yeah. But we can always do things to still build those muscles. Besides lunges, we can do other things. So, whatever works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And just try to stay in your lane where you're at, and just stay focused on you. Stay focused on you. Obviously ask for help and ask what worked for somebody else, but it might not work for you, and that's okay. It's perfectly fine. Yeah, so I've already talked through some of this stuff. I think one of the biggest issues that I tend to see, including myself, with pregnant athletes is pregnancy brain. Jeez, that's what I've got right now. Well, I'm not pregnant. Oh gosh. Just weak brain right there. But athlete brain. So if you have athlete brain, is just when your brain is telling you, like, my body can still do this. Like, I can still do this. But what's the risk? What's the reward? Why are you doing this? So a lot of times, I know with Emma, I did double unders until, there's videos on YouTube.
You're like 40 weeks.
Yeah, I'm super pregnant with her, and I was doing burpees also. Could I still do it? Yeah. Was I breathing properly through it? Yes. Was I making sure that my body was safe? Yes. But why? What was the reason for that? Honestly, it was COVID. We were trying to do videos of ourselves, and I just wanted to have one more video before I had a baby, because I did not know how it was going to go. So it was athlete brain. It was ego, and you just have to throw that to the side, because you just have to think like what you're risking. So what I was risking was nothing wrong with the baby. It was my pelvic floor that I was risking. It was issues that I would have postpartum that I could have been risking. Thankfully, I didn't really see any issues. I do think maybe it was because I was breathing right, but still, I don't know, and you just have to kind of weigh that out, because it could have, it may have set me back a little bit. I don't know. With Andy, I was a little bit more reserved, a little bit more aware of things. I still worked out hard when I could, and there's going to be good days and bad days, but that athlete brain, that ego, you just have to, I say suck it up. You just have to understand this is just a season of life, and it's not forever. And if you continue to do things, let's say that I was doing, at that point, when I was doing double unders and stuff, I really didn't feel any pressure later that night. I didn't feel pressure the next day. But if I had, I should have not done them. With Andy, when I was pregnant with her, I felt a lot of pressure early. I felt a lot of pressure doing certain movements, deep squats I did not like. So I didn't do heavy deep squats. I didn't really go to a certain depth on my squats. I was just trying to make sure that I was protecting my pelvic floor for postpartum, and just didn't want to have any major issues, because I did feel way more pressure second time around than I did first time around. But again, all individualized. So I'm talking about my experiences. It's not going to be the same for everybody. But risk versus reward is kind of where we start to get into the second trimester when it comes to pregnancy. We've got to think about postpartum. We have to think about what's going to happen there. Now, let's talk about modifying movements during pregnancy. the biggest thing that we're doing here is preparing ourselves for postpartum. Because as soon as I've had a baby, I can't just start. I cannot pick up where I left off when I was 12 weeks pregnant. You know, it's your body goes through so much. It's a big change. So modifying movements through pregnancy is going to be a big help for you mentally. I know right now I've got a couple of different moms that I am working with. The kids are starting to lose it. Want to sit with me for a minute? They don't talk. I've got a couple of different moms I'm working with, and they have very much. They're just so much better than I am. They listen to me. I don't tend to listen to myself. I think we all can get caught into not listening to our own advice, but they listen to me so well, and they move so well, and they are preparing themselves the right way for postpartum. Our bodies don't necessarily, our bodies do not necessarily need to be. We don't need to train for birth. Our bodies know what to do, but we do need to train for postpartum, and just mentally getting back into that. I'll shout out Morgan Knight has been doing an awesome job here lately. She's into that third trimester now, and she has been doing such a good job of really slowing down her movements and still getting the stimulus of the workouts are changing for her. The ones that she can do, she's doing great. The ones that she needs to change the stimulus of it, she's also doing great. She's moving through it properly. She's working on those muscles. She is breathing through movements super well, and it's been very fun to coach her through all of those things. It's fun for me to do this because, like I said before, it's going to be very individualized. If I recommend her do lat pull downs instead of pull-ups, somebody else, we're going to do self-assisted, seated pull-ups. Both are great options. Both have different goals there. Okay, one, you're working on your grip still while working on your lats, breathing through that. The other one, you're really just working those lats. They're both good options. But yeah, what I'm getting at is just because you're having to modify something, don't think you're less than. We talk about that often with movements in general, but especially when you're pregnant, just be prepared that modifying movements, we're again thinking about that risk versus that reward. So let's talk about like the different trimesters. We've got the girls are wanting to snuggle, or Emma wants to snuggle, and Andy don't want anything to do with it. So I think I have a example here. I'm 28 weeks pregnant and can still do toes to bar, but what's the reason to keep doing them? There's really not a reason. I guess I'm talking still about the risk versus the reward. There's not really a reason to still do toes to bar. At 28 weeks pregnant, you've got your belly, your abs are separating, all the things are happening there. So let's modify it. We don't want to build our core muscles, but we do want to maintain what we have, and we just want to still stay strong there. We don't want to lose that, again, for postpartum. So let's talk through the different trimesters. First trimester, typically what I tell my people, nothing has to change unless things feel uncomfortable to you. If this is your second, third, fourth, fifth, however many pregnancies, if this is a later pregnancy, you might feel more pressure early in the first trimester. So let's modify some stuff. If it's your first pregnancy, you might not feel any pressure or weird things, so we don't really have to change anything. Nothing has to necessarily change that first trimester, but it can. So you just have to be open with your coach, telling your coach what's going on, and then listen to your body. I know that sometimes when you become pregnant, you need to be very aware of what your body is doing and telling you, and how it feels. So after, let's say we do a workout, and then later that day, you're feeling a lot of pressure low. Okay, well, let's remember that, and let's remember the movements we did, and then the next day or next time you come back into the gym, talk to your coach about it, and let's modify it. Or let's make sure you're breathing right. Let's make sure you're doing the things the right way, so that way we can continue doing the right stuff. Now, second trimester, typically this is when we're going to start to modify stuff. your stomach is just going to be growing. And when your stomach is growing, okay, your abs are separating. So what's the point of building and like doing sit-ups? Let's just talk about ab mat sit-ups. If your belly is starting, we want our belly to grow. That means that the baby is growing, that we need to have room for the baby to grow. So those ab muscles start to separate because they can't stay together. They're going to have to naturally move because you got a little human inside of you. Doing ab mat sit-ups, doing toes to bar, doing certain ab specific movements, it's not really going to benefit you that much. So let's do dead bugs. That's going to help with your pelvic floor also, and it's going to maintain strength that you have, but it's not going to try to keep everything super tight. It's going to allow your body to move the way it's supposed to move. But still moving through that, still moving through your core muscles. And then third trimester, we're obviously getting later into the pregnancy. The baby is growing. Your belly is growing. And when your baby grows, that's adding a lot of weight to your pelvic floor. So as the baby gets bigger, that's just more weight being added. You've got that fluid in there around the baby. And it's just adding more weight to your pelvic floor. So we have to be very conscious, very aware. Let's say we have goblet squats in a workout. If I've got a 32-week pregnant woman, let's just do air squats. Like, you already have built-in weight. Like, let's not add load to that right now. Especially if it's in the front, your belly's pulling you to the front. Let's not do that. Now, can you still do back squats? Can you still do front squats? Can you still do shoulder press? Can you still do all these barbell or heavier movements? Yes, you can. I say heavier. All of these barbell movements where you can add weight. Yes, you definitely can. The recommendation I've been told is don't go above 80% of your 1 rep max of something, and also listen to your body. If your body's like, hey, this does not feel good. This deep squat does not feel good. Okay, let's still do it, but let's go to a different range of motion. Let's test out something a little different instead of getting our booty all the way to the ground. There's, again, very individualized for every single person, but we have to make sure that we are communicating well and listening to our body, so that way we know how to help you and help your pelvic floor. Because the last thing we want is for someone to come in here, tell us that they're pregnant, and then not tell us how things feel, especially as they get into the pregnancy. I'm super annoying, I know, and I'm always going up to my pregnant women. I'm like, how's that feeling? My postpartum women, how's that feeling? How did this feel? How did that feel? And I'm genuinely asking because I want to make sure that you're communicating with me well, and that I'm doing the best I can for you. I don't want you to be hurt. I don't want you to be out for a long time postpartum. I want you to get back. I know how difficult postpartum can be, so I want you to get back to where you feel more like yourself faster rather than taking longer, because I just know how that can feel. But you can work out all the way up until baby's due. As long as things are feeling good. I'm definitely always going to recommend, if you are pregnant later in your, well, always, but especially later in your pregnancy, if we've got a workout that we can easily do outside, let's get you outside. Let's get some sunshine. It just helps. It just helps your body feel better. Mentally, it helps you feel better. So if you're not coming to the gym later on in your pregnancy, like, cause you're like, hey, baby could come any day now, get outside, do stuff outside, especially summertime. It's a nice day. Just get outside, like, move. So yeah, we talked through pregnancy. I'm going to answer some questions here in a little bit, but I'm going to go through the postpartum phase of it. I will say, I think postpartum phase is one of my favorite phases to coach, because again, during pregnancy, that's what we're preparing for, is the postpartum phase. It's a hard phase. It's a trying phase. It's a sweet phase. I'll say that. Sometimes it doesn't feel very sweet, but you have your new baby, like that's precious. That's awesome. And you can use your baby as your weight. You can use your baby. I mean, that's what we still work out for. You still are going to have to pick your baby up. You're still going to have to pick the car seat up. You're still going to have to do certain things in the early postpartum phase that is similar to working out in here. And we talk through that a lot in classes. But a lot of times postpartum is referred to as the 4th trimester. A lot of people ask, when can I start working out? Like, as soon as I've had this baby, like, what is my timeline? Again, super individualized. With Emma, I'm just going to talk about my experiences. With Emma, it was COVID. Things were shut down. But we came up to the gym almost every day and did something because we needed to move. We needed to get out of the house, and like most of you guys did too. And I started to, I'll say, work out with air quotes within probably the first week. Now, my working out was me laying on the floor, breathing, getting in different positions, breathing, reconnecting with my core muscles, making sure that because man, when the baby comes out, like, your core is weak. I had a vaginal birth with both of the girls, but my abs were weak. And then if you've got a C-section, your abs were literally cut into. So super, super weak also. So you have to spend that time, if you've had a vaginal birth or a C-section, you have to spend that time breathing. So before you start doing anything, like, you can breathe as early as the day you have given birth and just try to really focus on just breathing. That's all it is. It's exhausting because, like John said, those muscles you're having to kind of rework a little bit. If we weren't breathing or weren't working on it super well in pregnancy, then it's just going to take some time postpartum, and that's okay. But just really focusing, like, lay on your back, stand up, lay on your side, get on all fours, breathe, and really trying to think and imagine those ab muscles coming back together every time you're exhaling, and lifting your pelvic floor. A thing that we want to avoid when we're breathing postpartum and pregnancy is, like, bearing down. We don't want to, like, push everything down. That can cause a lot of incontinence issues, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But actually, like, working out postpartum, after you kind of got the breathing thing down, which it doesn't take long to do that, because especially if you've been in here with me through your pregnancy, you're probably getting better at breathing, if not really good at breathing. But then we can start slowly, very slowly adding the intensity. So early postpartum and then end of pregnancy workouts are going to still look very similar. We're still slowing things down. We're still isolating certain muscles. We're just trying to move. But then we will start to increase intensity. There's going to be workouts where you're like, I think I can do this. And you can, and do it. Obviously, certain things are going to take hits while you're pregnant. Most women don't run the whole pregnancy. Not most. Some women don't run the whole pregnancy. So when we do start running again, that's a big one to make sure you're prepared for. But you're going to be out of breath. You've got to remember, just because you've had the baby and the baby's out doesn't mean your body's ready to go. We've got to work through a couple of little steps in order to get back to where we want to be. So usually I'll ask, like, hey, what's your goal? Where do we want to get to? And I'll try to give you a realistic timeline. It's not going to happen in a month. It's not going to happen sometimes in 4 months. But a lot depends on that C-section. If you had a vaginal birth, how much you tore, how the birth actually was, what was used there's a lot of different things that can happen during birth that can cause some issues postpartum, not just the baby being born, but different things. So we need to talk through all of that. How are you sleeping? Probably not that great because you have a newborn baby and they want to eat all the time. Are you nursing? Are you not nursing? Fun fact about nursing, if you do choose to nurse, your ligaments all over your body are still stretched out. They're still, there's like a liquid, I think, around them that still causes them to, your body is still loose, I guess is the right term. Like, your hips are still going to be loose. So you've got to keep that in mind during however long you tend to breastfeed. And you also have to keep in mind when you breastfeed, your body's going to hold on to fat. The reason for that is to produce the milk. I know once I hit a certain point, I get super frustrated with my body because I am working out normal again. I am feeling good. The intensity's back in there, but my body is still squishy. My body does not feel how it should feel, or how I think it should feel, but I'm still nursing. And I have to remember, if I want to continue to do that for my baby, this is just the sacrifice I have to make right now. And that's a very, very hard place mentally to get to, but it's just a season of life. Yeah. You're not going to nurse the baby forever.
I can imagine that's a tough mental transition, especially if you've been working out pretty consistently and hard beforehand. usually you think, because exercises should always be, hey, what's the most optimal thing I can do for this workout?
Right.
And really, most of the time that is, okay, what weight, what's the heaviest weight that I can do this safely at least, or how fast can I go? I'm going to push myself, because we do know that pushing yourself and going close to failure is really beneficial for muscle hypertrophy and getting stronger and all those different things. But now what's optimal is no longer weight and how fast you can go. What's optimal is moving and breathing correctly.
Just reconnecting with your body.
Reconnecting, letting things heal, or preparing things to heal while you're still maintaining as best you can. That's the most optimal thing.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to be excited about, which is less exciting in a sense than how fast you went or how heavy you went or something like that. But I can imagine that's a tough mental transition.
Yeah, it's super challenging. I will say my pregnancy with Emma, I struggled really bad. I guess the postpartum side with Emma, just not being where I thought I'd be. That was my first pregnancy. I had no idea how it was going to go, no idea how the postpartum was going to go. I mean, I had advice from others, but it's very individualized. But I have worked out my whole life. I've been active my whole life. And it was a struggle. It was a challenge. And then when I got pregnant with Andy, I remember thinking, like, I just don't want to mentally, I did it to myself. You know, I had an expectation set for myself that I wasn't reaching postpartum with Emma, and I was setting myself up for failure. So with Andy, I really wanted to not do that, because postpartum is hard enough as it is. So us trying to take that away, like that pressure away from ourselves, is almost the only thing you can control. So with Andy, I really tried for the athletic side of it to set goals like, hey, I'm not that great at deadlifts. Okay, that's what I'm going to work on a lot this pregnancy. I'm going to slow down with deadlifts. I'm going to make sure that I'm isolating the right muscles. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And honestly, it did help me when I started to lift heavy weights again. I've been talking about that a lot, actually. How it just slowing down when you get later on into that pregnancy, it really, you've got to look at it. You've got to look at it as a way to get better. Like, that's almost the only way you can look at it is, I'm going to get better through this experience of pregnancy, because I'm going to slow things down now. And I'm going to, whenever I do come back and I am ready to go intense, these movements are going to look so good because I've slowed down so much. So you just have to kind of play around with it.
Yeah.
But it is, postpartum can be enjoyable. It can be very challenging, but it can be enjoyable if you are understanding that it's going to be some time. It's going to take some time, and you've got to sink into it, because it doesn't last forever. That is something I had to tell myself. This will not last forever. And yeah, we're just kind of
I think that's really hard first baby, probably. Yeah. Because you've never recovered from it before, so you feel like your body's never going to get back. Yeah.
100%, Johnny. All right, so let's talk about some issues that can come up postpartum. We'll talk about one of the more intense ones, I guess, prolapse. So prolapse is when an organ is falling out. Very intense. A lot of women will tend to feel some bulging down there, and that's at the beginning. That's not the beginning part, but that's a stage of prolapse. So I did have a woman that was probably, I don't know how far along postpartum she was. It was her second baby. I want to say it was within the first 3 or 4 months she came in here. I did not have her through pregnancies. But I was open line of communication. She told me, she felt good. She moved pretty well. And then a couple weeks into it, she was talking to us about a bulging that she had kind of felt down there. And the first thing I said was go to Jasma. Jasma is the pelvic floor PT that I'm going to tell every pregnant woman, postpartum woman to go to. She is fantastic, and she works through all stages. Even if you haven't had a kid yet and you're having some issues, which we'll talk about in a second, go see her. But she went to go see her, and she was experiencing some prolapse. So she was at a beginning stage. I don't really know the phases. I think it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But she was at a phase of prolapse. So in here, we no longer jumped until that got fixed. We did not run until that got fixed. Like, certain things were taken away, but we worked hard on breathing. She was working with Jasmine, and me and her were working simultaneously together. And now she is running. Now she is jumping. Now she is doing all these things that she could not do. And I think her kid is almost 2, maybe almost 3. But it takes some time, but you've got to invest in yourself. You have to invest in yourself, especially if you've got some prolapse issues. But yeah, if you are experiencing any kind of bulging, if you've had prolapse, or you do have prolapse, or you've had surgery to correct prolapse, that is something that needs to be communicated with the coach, because there are certain movements we're going to avoid for a little while until we feel comfortable with you doing those again, because it's not worth something falling out. Usually it's your bladder, but it can be other organs that fall out, and then surgery is required at that point. And obviously, no matter what we're doing, we want to avoid surgery at all costs. But that prolapse can be caused from either coming back too early, not breathing through movements, kind of not listening to what your body's telling you, the birth of your baby. Like, it doesn't have to be anything that you've specifically done, but just the way the babies come out, the way that has happened, prolapse can happen. So just be very aware of your body. That's not to scare anybody. I know the first 6 months for me, I'm always like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But it's just a lot is changing. So you just have to pay attention to that. We're going to talk about diastasis, recti. We talk about that a lot. That is just the separation of your abs. So in the middle part. They haven't come back together yet. So that's the fascia that we talked about earlier. I remember one of the first clinics that I went to with Jasma. I think you were there with me. I think you were there. I'm pretty sure you were there. Lydia had brought her in, and we talked about the separation. I hadn't had a kid yet, and my abs, there was a normal separation. There's going to be a normal separation there. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, John has that. John's abs, there's a huge, and you can see it. You're one of the lucky ones that has visible abs. And you could clearly see the line going down his stomach. That's not necessarily a good thing, but it's not a bad thing as long as you are breathing properly through it. So, there's a way that I can check for your diastasis. You want it to be less than 2 fingers apart when I'm checking for it. Usually around the belly button, it takes a little bit longer for it to come back together. But all that is, when you're pregnant, and I'll talk about the coning. If you can see coning, that's just that fascia in the middle coming together because you're displacing that pressure. So making sure you breathe properly while you're pregnant and avoiding movements that is causing the coning can potentially help the diastasis postpartum. But you could still experience coning postpartum. I do sometimes if I'm doing something that's too core intensive and I'm not breathing properly. It's a good cue for me. It's a visible cue for me to be like, oh, I either need to stop doing this movement or let me see if I can change my breathing up a little bit. Where you do have a little bit of separation in your abs, but I have never seen it cone. You do a very good job of breathing through. So guys do have this also. But you just specifically, do well breathing.
I've seen it cone on GHDs before.
Have you?
Mm-hmm. And I'll have to.
Which GHDs are super, super core intensity, but changing up your breathing.
Right. I can change up the way I breathe and kind of feel the pressure difference and get it to not happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you've been able to see that. But yeah, so if you see coning, men, women, if you see coning while you are breathing or while you're moving, working out, whatever, you're just putting all that pressure right into your belly. So we need to change our breathing and try to displace that pressure, okay? So that way we don't add more there. I know Jasma was working with a woman, she was in her 70s, and she had a huge, it was not a hernia, but it was just a huge separation of this woman's abs. I mean, she hadn't had kids in 30, 40 years, I don't know how old her youngest child was, but it had been a while since she had had babies. And she had a huge separation because she never, which women's health is just now becoming a big thing, but she had never worked towards closing that separation. So breathing through movements is going to help you close that separation. And then there's also something we can do with a scarf or a towel where you're sitting and you're breathing and you're kind of squeezing a towel. You can also wear belly bands. I don't really know, binders. I'm not sure what, there's different names for them. But that can help your muscles just know how to go back. Because it's hard. Your muscles get separated. Some get separated more than others. And it's hard to know how to get back there. So that's why I usually will wear, I think it's called belly band. Maybe it's a belly binder. But I usually will wear those the first couple of months postpartum, especially if I'm increasing the intensity of workouts and it's a super ab workout that day. Now, incontinence. What we are looking at here, okay, this is peeing or pooping uncontrolled. So we don't tend to see the pooping side of it. That actually happens a lot in men. Men struggle with the incontinence there. But what we see a lot in our gym is the peeing. So I tend to talk about this often when we have jump ropes in a workout, because that's just when we see it the most. Jump ropes, running, anything that you're like compacting, jumping, we tend to see it often. This happens even when you haven't had kids. So it's typically, regardless if you've had kids or you haven't had kids, it's coming from a poor or weak core control. So those deep core abs that we've kind of been talking about, they've reached their limit. So let's say with jump ropes, they've reached their limit. And the peak just can't be held in anymore, so it comes out. My suggestion has always been, let's talk specifically about jump ropes. So we've got 100 jump ropes, and we can make it to 20, and then we start feeling the urge to pee or feeling like we need to pee. So I want you to stop at 20. And then reset. Not stop the whole workout, not just stop at 20 and move on, but stop, reset your abs, and then go again. And you might only get to 15 that time. And then you start feeling it or you start leaking again. Stop. Reset your abs. Make sure that everything is connected. And when I say that, remember, we're talking about breathing too. So if you're holding your breath and you're pushing everything down, you're going to pee. So you've got to make sure that you know how to breathe, and you've got to make sure that you are engaging those deep core muscles through breath. I know a ton of women struggle with this in their 40s, 50s, 60s, because they were not taught when they were younger. Because again, this is all very new. It's not new, but people are finally talking about it. So like we said earlier, if that is you've had kids, or even if you haven't had kids and you're struggling with leaking while you're doing jump ropes, just know you're going to have to take some time to work on that while you're doing workouts. So 100 double under workout plus running plus all these other things. And that's where you're struggling. Stop at 20. Rest for a second. Get your body ready to go again. And then go again. You're just going to have to take some time. Don't jump through the peeing. That's not going to help you in the long run. That's not going to... you're not going to get any better by jumping. It's not going to fix itself. You have to actually put in the work to do it, and it's going to take time. It's going to be frustrating because you're used to being able to do 50 unbroken. You could do 50 unbroken, but you're going to pee on yourself, and that's not what we want. Like, you don't want to pee on yourself. You don't want to pee and then have to go out to eat and smell like pee, you know?
It sounds like a muscle fatigue thing. Is that what it is?
Yes, your muscles are weak. Your muscles are weak and they reach their limit.
Say at 20 reps, those pelvic floor muscles are just giving out because they're tired.
And they can't hold the pee in anymore.
So it's just like any other thing.
Yes.
So you have to think of it as like failure is not when you physically can't do whatever the rep is. Failure is when any of the muscles that you're trying to work, for whatever movement that is, gives out.
Yes.
Normally we see that in bad form, but in this case you can't see it, you feel it.
Yes. And sometimes you can see it. So I'll talk often on jump rope specifically if your rib cage is flared open. So if we are flared open, if I can easily see the ceiling while I am jumping rope, my core is not engaged at all. And if you are ever flared open, so running, jumping, whatever it is, you're opening everything up to where you're more likely to pee anyway. So if you can at least lock it down here and practice that breathing in those deep core muscles, then you're less likely to pee. Okay, so most of the time we get you can't have this right now, and most likely we get tired and we keep jumping and we wind up here, and that's when we start peeing on ourselves. So that our core is just tired. So you just stop and reset. Lock down your rib cage. Needs to stay over your hips. Keep them locked in, and then go again. And once you feel yourself starting to come opened up again, stop. and reset. So that is a cue. Obviously, as coaches, we're not going to run up to you and be like, "Oh, your rib cage is opened up. Stop."
Yeah.
That's fine. That's just a cue for you also, as the person working out. Just making sure that you are focusing there. So something, if you have not had a kid and you are experiencing incontinence, it could be a couple of different things that you can work on. So potentially your deep core muscles are weak, like we talked about before. And when you get fatigued, you just lose control. So that goes for women who haven't had kids or women that have had kids. Your pelvic floor could also be too tight, too much ab gripping, your top abs, that's just too much tension in your diaphragm. A lot is going on there. So when I was postpartum with Emma, I don't think I experienced leaking, but I don't remember what it was, but Jasmine, I was working with her, and my pelvic floor muscles were too tight. I didn't know that they could be too tight, but they can. So if you are doing like Kegels and stuff like that, that's not necessarily a good thing, because you could make it too tight where you're still peeing on yourself. So it's just talking about your abs. Like, there could be a muscle within the deep pelvic floor, your deep abs, that is just too much is locked up and the other ones are weak around it. So it's just not, it's still not working the right way. And then breathing. So your breathing control could be an issue if you're holding your breath, which a lot of us tend to do, or allowing the pressure to move downward. So pushing and bearing down, leakage could be an issue. So a couple of different things. I am not a pelvic floor PT. So again, I'm going to always recommend Jasmine. She is fantastic. She can tell you exactly what's wrong. And she has very good relationships with, I think, pretty much all of the OBs in Etowah County. And then she also, like, I use Dr. J. He's my OB, and her and Dr. J work very well together. So go see her, talk to her. She talks with the doctors also. Like, she's a good all-around pelvic floor PT for everyone to go see, all my ladies to go see. Now let's talk about C-section just a little bit. I have not had a C-section, but I've had several of my women have had C-sections. It's pretty brutal. Okay, so you're getting cut open. And it's not just cutting your skin, it's cutting into your muscle. So you've got to think through that postpartum. If you've had a C-section, give yourself a lot of grace, because your muscle has just been, not shredded, but it's been cut. So there's might be a little bit more work to be done when it comes to reconnecting those ab muscles. There might be a little bit, it might be a longer timeline, it might not be. Some of my C-scar women have come back about the same time as a vaginal. Some have been a little later, some have been sooner. So it really just depends on what you're doing. So I'm still going to recommend the breathing postpartum. One of the biggest things I'm going to recommend is the massage on your scar. So after it's healed, don't do it while it's healing, obviously, but after your scar has healed, there's going to be scar tissue that is created around that scar. So you have to massage that out with oil or a lotion, because obviously that skin to skin, I don't know why, well I do know why, but that skin gets very, very sensitive. So you've got to make sure you're doing it the right way. You can look these up online, or again, go see Jasmine. Jasmine also has papers that she probably will send us, specifically how to do that scar tissue massage. This also goes for hysterectomies. So I've had a couple of women in here that have had a hysterectomy 20-ish years ago, and they're experiencing a lot of back pain. They went to go see Jasmine, and it's coming from the scar tissue, because they've never done the scar tissue massage. So that scar tissue is so built up there, they're not able to use their abs the way that they're supposed to use their abs, and that they're using their back instead.
Do you think that's the same for hernias? People
Yes.
who've had surgery on hernias?
Yes.
Somebody was talking to me this week about they had a previous hernia surgery, and they
They were
felt like it was
experiencing
causing
lower
some
back pain.
issues. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess the hernia depends on where the hernia is at. Like, where's the
Yeah.
scar?
I don't know. It says sports hernia, so I'm guessing it was
Just like kind of close to a
above your
C-section.
groin. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that area is so tender and so sensitive. So, hey, quit. That area is so tender and so sensitive that it, and there's a lot of important ab muscles there, a lot of just important organs, all the things that are right there. So you've got to, allowing yourself or doing the scar tissue massage is going to allow that scar tissue to break up and not necessarily just get there and stay and just not let you move the way you're supposed to. So doing that earlier is better. If you are 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years post C-section or hysterectomy scar, it's not too late. You still have plenty of time to correct that and just work through that scar tissue. You might need to go see JASMA or another pelvic floor PT that's going to help you get into that a little deeper. There might be some acupuncture, dry needling, whatever you need to do in order to help break that up a little bit, but it's not too late. So definitely go see somebody to help with that. But another thing that I have seen, and this could be because the scar tissue was not being massaged properly, but another thing is ab mat sit-ups. It was like a year or two ago, I had a couple of women that had a C-section, maybe 5-10ish years ago, so more recent one, and it was burning. Their scar was burning. I hear scars burning often. I do think that could be a buildup of scar tissue, but it also could be we're not breathing properly. We're displacing that pressure. All that pressure is going to the scar, and I can imagine that would be a little bit painful. So yeah, those are some recommendations that I have when it comes to scars, C-section, hysterectomy, or hernia. I hadn't really thought about hernia, but for sure. So now I'm going to spend some time, unless John, you have anything specific that I did not cover. This is a pretty general, like I said, everything's pretty individualized and specific to that person.
Yeah.
But if there's anything that you've kind of heard, coaching questions, I'm going to answer some questions that I had posted about. So I guess I'll just...
we talked about this this week actually. I think most people, women specifically, have it backwards in, I guess, mentally thinking about how to prepare for being pregnant and postpartum and exercising, and that, like, they're super careful during their pregnancy. Like, right out the gate, they're like, oh my goodness, I need to start being careful. What do I need to do to be careful? Because they're concerned about the baby and the health of the baby. But like you said, there's really little that you can do to hurt that baby unless you're being stupid.
Yeah.
But they're not so concerned after. They're like, sweet, after a few weeks, I should be able to get back after, which really the longer journey is after.
Yes.
And the actual pregnancy it generally seems like it feels a little bit better. And then there's like this huge surprise of, oh wow, this really hit me hard postpartum, and it's a lot longer journey than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, postpartum, I remember asking, I think I was pregnant with Emma, and I had asked, how long is postpartum? And they said, for the rest of your life. I was like, oh my goodness, what? Which there is like a phase of postpartum, that early postpartum, where things are a little bit more important than later on. But it is true. Postpartum, it is the rest of your life, but that's not scary. It shouldn't be scary. I was definitely terrified when I first heard that. I understand being anxious and being nervous about working out while you're pregnant. If it causes you so much anxiety or stress, don't do it. Like, my recommendation is to do something active. Moving is always better than just not moving. But if it makes you so nervous that it's causing some issues, like with you mentally or with relationships, don't do it. I definitely want to say that. But the reason we work out while we're pregnant is to prepare for postpartum. And it's also just for our general health and the baby's general health. It does, there have been studies shown that it does help. So when you get pregnant, understand that you're in it for the long haul, and the postpartum side of it is very, very important. Probably more important because it's more important for you. So yeah, let's answer some of these questions. I had one that said all the details on working out while pregnant and working out beforehand to be prepared. I feel like I've answered that pretty well.
Yeah, I feel like I covered that pretty good, as much as you can without being too individualized.
Yeah, so if this was you that asked this question, or if this is a question that you have, come talk to me. Like, I am more than happy to sit down with you, ask you some questions, kind of understand you better and understand what your goals are. We all have different goals. Some people want to get back to let's say do a competition 8 months postpartum. Okay, well your goals are going to look a little different than somebody that doesn't want to do a competition but just wants to be able to run in 8 months postpartum. You know, so there's a 1,000 different goals for people, which is really fun for us as a coach. Like I love that. So come talk to us and we'll sit down, we'll kind of write stuff out and we'll figure it out together. You're not alone in that journey, just know that. Can a C-section be compared to a hysterectomy in terms of recovery? So this was a great question, and I had to text my friend Jasmine. And kind of what we came from it. This is the recovery, the healing from both of these different surgeries. You run a greater risk of prolapse after having a hysterectomy. That surprised me. When the uterus is taken out, which is happening with the hysterectomy, certain ligaments that support the pelvic floor are going to be cut. So that's going to loosen up the fascial sling there. So if you've had a hysterectomy, you're more likely to have prolapse. So keep that in mind because of those reasons. Those ligaments are being completely cut. Now, with a C-section, they're just taking the baby out. They're moving things out, but they're not cutting anything besides your initial cut. They're not cutting anything else out. A good way to think about it is, let's think if we've had an ACL tear. So we've torn our ACL. Your knee is still going to work without an ACL, but it's going to loosen a lot of the stability. So you have to make sure the quads in the front of your leg and then your hamstrings in the back of your leg are still working well, or you're going to have a lot of issues. So after having hysterectomy, you just have to make sure that you are strengthening the things around it in order to not suffer from prolapse, hopefully. Hey, baby. Hey, the kids are starting to lose it a little bit.
We'll let you
Okay. So yeah, that was super interesting to me. I thought that was a great question. I had not had that one before. So they are different, hysterectomy versus C-section. Just making sure that you are, like everything else, prepared and recovering properly. The best pregnancy leggings, shorts, and bras. Sanita clothing. I don't know, but I know they're leggings. When I was pregnant with Emma, I loved them. They covered my belly, and they were high. With Andy, I didn't want anything on my belly. Maybe it's because she was a summer baby, or I was mainly pregnant with her in the hot months, and Emma was the later months. But I wanted things low, so it really just depends on your preference. Shorts, there's a lot of good ones on Amazon, but really like biker shorts. Sometimes I liked them high, sometimes I liked them low, but I didn't want them too tight. But I typically don't buy anything when I'm pregnant extra for pregnancy. I just have like a couple different sizes of my normal shorts that I have, and I'll just wear those while I'm pregnant, and then cinch them up if I do lose that weight postpartum. And then bras, like sports bras, I don't think I own a regular bra, but sports bras for nursing, I think it's Auden, Auden, from Target, that brand. They have a nursing sports bra, and I loved it. And they also had like regular ones. It's not like a bra that's painful, but it was a comfortable bra, and it was still a nursing bra by that brand. I really enjoyed those. They held me in like I needed to be, but it's a lot of trial and error. You really can't go wrong with anything. The best pelvic floor exercises, how to best ease back into things after having a baby. So I actually got this question asked the other day about pelvic floor exercises, like what to do when you're pregnant. I don't really think there's much to do when you're pregnant, besides breathing through movements like we've talked about and just connecting. And I think the same is for postpartum. In here, at least, I think those are the things that I'm going to recommend. There's a couple of different movements or something with a pressure cuff. I absolutely hate doing this movement, but you put the pressure cuff behind your hip, you're laying on the ground, you've got the little dial thing, and you're trying to keep it at the same, you're trying not to let the needle move too much while one leg is moving, the other's not. Super difficult to do. That's why I did not enjoy it, but it is so wonderful, and it is very helpful. That's helping your pelvic floor and your abs, kind of just connecting everything back together again. There's certain things that we can do, like marches. Really, it's just moving well and breathing properly. Now, there's things that Jasmine can do with you if you're having like some issues with your pelvic floor. Go see her, and there's definitely some things that she can give you specifically for some issues if anybody's having those. And then how to ease back into things after having a baby. I think we've kind of answered that one. Just starting with breath, just learning how to breathe while just standing, sitting, laying, walking, and then we kind of transfer all of that over into here and just move with it. At what point in pregnancy do you start modifying, and is it different for multi-pregnancies? I think I've answered this one pretty well. It's very individualized. Typically, second trimester, we're going to start to modify movements, and then third trimester or later in that second trimester, we're taking the intensity out of it. Is it different for multi-pregnancies? I think so. I know with Andy, I had to modify things a little bit sooner. But I also think it's mindset, too. My mindset was a little different with Andy versus Emma. I guess somebody gave me a topic. Recovery postpartum. Oh, when sleep isn't happening and isn't going to. So if any of us have had kids, that postpartum recovery is very important, and we know sleep is important. We know sleep is important for recovery in general, just day-to-day life. Haven't had a kid, it's still important. When you have a kid and they're a newborn and you're nursing or you're bottle feeding, you're still having to wake up and feed the baby, and sleep is just very hard. And people say, just sleep when the baby sleeps. Well, I know y'all have seen the reels of, the baby fell asleep in the stroller, so the mom just falls asleep on the ground in the middle of the road with the baby in the stroller. It's just not practical. For me, it stresses me out. Like when the baby sleeps is when I need to get stuff done. So I think that embracing and understanding it's a season of life, and there will be some days that it's just better sleep. The baby gives you a little bit longer stretches in the middle of the night. I think just understanding that this won't last forever and trying to think that in a positive light will help get through those times. But what you can control, like you can't control your baby's sleep as much as we wish we could. We can't. So trying to control the things in recovery that you can. So how you're eating, nutrition, making sure you're really getting good amount of protein, making sure you are moving, making sure you're getting outside, doing the things that you control in recovery, I think will help, but also not overdoing it. Now, I think the person that asked this, they also have like 3 other kids that they're being run all over the place with, plus a newborn baby. That's hard. That's just a hard season of life. And I think, again, just trying to control what you can control without overstressing yourself. Because if you're going to stress about, I know when the baby is a newborn, for me, as soon as the baby would go to sleep, as soon as Andy would go to sleep at like 6 o'clock, 6:30, like, you know, babies are all over the place with their sleep, but that would be her longest stretch, like 6 to 10 or something like that, I would go to sleep. Like, I'm a morning person. When it starts getting dark outside, I am ready for bed. Doesn't matter what time it is. So it worked for me to just literally go to sleep, but she was just my second baby, and my other baby, Emma, was a year and a half. So it wasn't like we were playing sports. It wasn't like we were doing certain things that got us pulled away. Now, John did have to come up and coach and things like that, but he would take Emma with him. Like, you just have to kind of do what's going to work best for you. Because I know that early sleep, and it's just so hard to come to get. But once you get it and you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my gosh, my brain, it functions right. I can think, I can have a conversation with somebody. So I definitely feel for you, and just try to control what you can control. And I know that's hard. What does it feel? Oh my gosh. I can't remember if this was Tyler or Josh, but whatever. What does it feel like to poop after having a baby? Well, it can be pretty terrifying. I think they're talking about specifically a vaginal delivery. I know in the hospital they'll give you some stool softeners. There's some other things you can take that can help with that. But it's pretty scary, especially depending on the type of tear that you've had. If you had a episiotomy where they've had to rip you, I haven't not had that experience, so I'm not really sure how that goes. I would be terrified. But That's a good question. Most women, I know when I was pregnant with Emma, I was scared. I didn't know what to expect, but you just do it and you move on. When can I work out again postpartum? So that's one of our biggest questions. I hope that I answered that one well already. It is very individualized. You don't want to just jump right back into it, because if you do, that could just cause a couple of issues later on that we want to try to avoid. But I believe, because I answered, the incontinence if you haven't had any kids yet. I believe I've answered all of those questions, but the gist of this was just to kind of give a general discussion or have a general discussion on pregnancy and postpartum. It is a precious time, pregnancy and postpartum. It's a sweet, sweet time in a woman's life, but it's also a very hard time. So we are here for you. I love working with all of the members here, but especially ones going through that season of life. It's just something that's on my heart that I've always enjoyed, and I want to help people kind of get through it the best that they can, because postpartum, the mental side of it can be very tough. So if we can get in here and hopefully get you mentally, at least maybe like kind of checked out for just a little bit and not having to think through things and just move and just breathe and just enjoy, that's what I want. But if there's any specific questions, if I didn't answer something, shoot us a message on Instagram or text me. I'm always down to talk about this stuff. I very much enjoy it. But yeah, I guess that's all that we've got for this. We'll see y'all in the gym.